Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, art, and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. Well, it finally looks like we're out of the January lull and into the weeks where the charts start to get a little bit busier. And sure, some of that was bound to happen thanks to the new Panic at the Disco album doing a lot better than I'd argue anybody expected. But more of it is the feeling that things are starting to change up in force, especially coming up into February with a lot of big releases, with the chart instability of the past few weeks only further indicative of that. As such, let's start off with our top 10, where Justin Bieber has become one of the few artists in history to hold both the number 1 and number 2 song at the same time. Yay, I guess. Ugh, look, I've been bored with Justin Bieber for a while now, and though Sorry is sitting at number 1 thanks to huge streaming and YouTube dominance, it's effectively instrumental white noise for me right now. And it's also not gonna last much longer if airplay and sales keep slipping the way they are, likely to be replaced by Love Yourself at number 2, which has a lot of serious momentum behind it, gaining the top spot in sales and streaming and gaining airplay fast. It doesn't quite have the YouTube in the same way, but I doubt that'll be much of an obstacle here. It was enough to push back Hello by Adele down to number 3, as it appears to be dropping a lot faster than I expected, with airplay and freefall tumbling streaming, and with at best YouTube and surprisingly strong sales keeping it where it is. But it's also got competition coming from Stressed Out by 21 Pilots at number 4, can't believe I'm saying that, which is continuing to rack up airplay and sales, although this week the big jump came in streaming. It might not have YouTube, but to some extent it won't matter the way that it's going. Next up we've got Here by Alessia Cara at number 5, and frankly I think it only got this spot thanks to airplay inertia and other songs' weaknesses, because despite picking up a bit in streaming, it's losing airplay and sales are non-existent. Probably similar case for Stitches by Shawn Mendes going up to number 6, picked up a bit of streaming, held the line on radio to disguise the fact that the sales just aren't there. For the weaknesses, you can probably point to Same Old Love by Selena Gomez falling down to number 7, which is just hemorrhaging airplay at an even faster rate and doesn't have enough streaming or YouTube to back it up. Now this brings us to the challenger, the new top 10 entry for this week, Roses by the Chainsmokers featuring Roses at number 8. Now, I'll be blunt, it's kind of surreal to see that after Selfie, the mainstream public decided to give the Chainsmokers another hit, especially one as choppy, jumbled, and all over the place as Roses, even if I have softened it on the track a little bit since I covered it on Billboard Breakdown months ago. But regardless, it's got some real momentum behind it. Decent streaming, respectable sales, and actually picking up some airplay traction, which I never would have expected. Now this takes us to our last 2 entries, the first being Hotline Bling by Drake at number 9, which is basically being propped up by YouTube and some remaining streaming and airplay at this point. And What Do You Mean by Justin Bieber holding on at number 10, also held up by YouTube and given the heavy streaming losses, basically nothing else. And on the topic of losses, let's take a look at our losers and dropouts. In the former category, they were numerous this week. The biggest losses came to Fetty Wap, as both Trap Queen and RGF Island both left the charts, but Blase by Ty Dolla $ign, Future, and Ray Shrimmer wasn't far behind it. And neither were both songs from the celebrity couple on The Voice, I Used to Love You by Gwen Stefani and Gunna by Blake Shelton, both being gone from the charts. Now, we didn't get that many actual chart losers this week. Now, the few we did, I'm not complaining about New Americana by Halsey continuing its fall to 87, or Gonna Know We Were Here by Jason Aldean beginning its exit at 74. What concerns me a little bit more is Confident by Demi Lovato falling down to 40. I know its traction's been a little bit shaky in recent weeks, but if it starts losing momentum, it'll miss the year-end list for 2016 if it starts falling now. I genuinely hope that doesn't happen, because it's a great song. And speaking of unfortunate developments, we might as well talk about our re-entries and gains. The first in the re-entries being Emperor's New Clothes by Panic at the Disco, coming back to 72, as you would expect given the album's success. Unfortunately, I've really gotten sick of this song, and I can't say that I'm happy to see it back, even if just for a short time. And then there's Acquainted by The Weeknd at number 100, planned as the next single. Fantastic, so the worst song off of his album Beauty Behind the Madness is positioned as the next single instead of Dark Times with Ed Sheeran, or Losers with Labyrinth, or even Tell Your Friends, which has a Kanye producing credit. All of which would be far better single choices than this, so we'll see what happens here, see if the public agrees with me. Where the charts got a lot more busy are in the gains, and we got a sizable chunk of them here. Of their debuts last week, Bang My Head by David Guetta, Sia, and Fetty Wap jumped up to 84, and Drunk on Your Love by Brett Eldridge pulled up to 69. Both are pretty mediocre, not exactly pleased there. Nor am I impressed that Dessert by Darwin featuring Silento jumped up to 68, or Hands to Myself by Selena Gomez continues to gather momentum at 21. Fortunately though, the rest of the gains I'm actually quite happy with. My House by Flo Rida being generally enjoyable as it jumps all the way up to number 11, could break the top 10 soon. Sugar by Robin Schultz featuring Francesco Yates giving momentum to 58. Heartbeat by Carrie Underwood picking up to 60. And to my surprise, You Should Be Here by Cole Swindle going to 70. And Nobody to Blame by Chris Stapleton hitting 80. I honestly thought that Cole Swindle's best song was Dead in the Water and Chris Stapleton would never pick up enough traction to hit country radio, but maybe I was wrong there, which is only a good thing, not complaining. So okay, let's see if our new arrivals can hold up all that quality, starting with number 98, Lean and Dabb by ILoveMemphis. Okay, I should have been expecting this. After all, Silento managed to find a way to get a second hit lodged on the charts and gaining right now. I should have known that the Hit the Quan guy would have something in reserve too. And I'm gonna say this. Of all the new crunk hits that I've seen, this isn't as bad as most of them. I'd take this over Watch Me or Hit the Quan any day. Well, it's because of the production that at least tries to sound a little bit rougher and doesn't have a terrible synth line. It might start off more brittle and rattling than most, not helped by the background of girlish backing vocals that just get kind of insufferable. But finally, they got some vocals on the bridge that actually sounded grittier to match the production. And I mean, sure, ILoveMemphis is still completely underwhelming. He's milking the Hit the Quan for all it's worth. The shoutouts to Google them on the outros just screams of desperation. And it's definitely exasperating to watch him try and infuse even more dance references into his new dance song, but there's definitely an undercurrent of real gratitude to the song behind all the bragging, and there's an open acknowledgement that despite how awful Hit the Quan was, it pulled him out of poverty, and that's something special for him. Of the new crunk songs that I've heard, this is probably one of the closest to crunk, and thus is probably the best for me. Still pretty mediocre, and ILoveMemphis is far from a good rapper, but you know what? I can tolerate this most days. I'll take it. Number 96, 7 Years by Lukas Graham.
By 11, smoking herb and drinking burning liquor. Never rich, so we were out to make that steady figure. Once I was 11 years old, my daddy told me, go get yourself a wife or you'll be lonely. Once I was 11 years old.
Okay, first things first, Lukas Graham is not a person. In fact, it's a pop band that actually has some impressive success in Denmark, blending in elements of soul, and has only crossed over outside of Scandinavia with this single 7 Years. But I doubt it was the soul influences that got Lukas Graham crossing over because of the slightly off-kilter flow and the sharp staccato percussion against the swells of strings and piano. This is very much falling into the vein of 21 Pilots, or at least trying to be like them. And while I won't say it's as clever and self-referential as 21 Pilots at their best, Lukas Graham is also telling a bigger story, focusing on his come up, focusing on his dreams and the family that he keeps close to him, and reflecting on the future that lies ahead, utilizing his increasing age as signposts for the future. Honestly, it's a pretty sweet sentiment that's executed pretty effectively in a way that I found quite charming. And while Remember When by Alan Jackson is still the gold standard when it comes to this sort of song, I'm not complaining because this track, pretty damn good. I like this regardless. Check it out. Number 95, Middle by DJ Snake featuring Bipolar Sunshine.
For us, I promise to build a new world for us two, with you in the middle.
So did you know that DJ Snake doesn't yet have a debut album? And sure, that's common among electronic producers who only churn out singles, but for as much production work as DJ Snake has put in, including multiple top 10 hits, he hasn't bothered to release an album to the mainstream until now. This is reportedly the lead-off single, recruiting a little-known English singer-songwriter Bipolar Sunshine. Yes, it's a ridiculous name for his hook. And yet, of DJ Snake's singles, this is probably not one of my favorites, and probably it's my least favorite. Clinking percussion and ear-splitting swells of synth that bleed into a barely comprehensible hook overloaded with pitch shifting. It's got this thin shrillness that really does not sit well with me at all. I mean, I'll give Bipolar Sunshine some credit for trying to give this track some weight, but he can't help but sound completely listless. I don't really like his vocal delivery, which is very much at odds with the oddly calculated lyrics, which seem to be playing off ignorance and just feeling a little bit too frigid to inspire a lot of feeling for this song trying to hold a relationship together. DJ Snake songs, I might have warmed a little bit to Lean On, but I don't see that happening here. Really do not care for this at all. Next, number 92, Death of a Bachelor by Panic at the Disco. So this is our first of 2 new Panic at the Disco songs, the title track where Brendon Urie puts forward his best impression of Frank Sinatra swagger. And look, as I said when I reviewed the album, it's a good song, but I just don't buy the attitude at all. This is Brendon Urie exploring the loss of his bachelorhood with a vintage sample, a bass-heavy snap beat with horns, that's trying to pay for a certain swagger at the morning bachelor life but finding new happiness, and yet most of that swagger just completely dissolves on a hook where Brendon Urie shreds his voice with raw power that's, yeah, it's potent, but doesn't exactly match the rest of the swagger that he's attempting. He cares too much for this sort of song. And then you have that jittery organ interlude that only gets marginally better with the horns. And am I the only one thinking that Brendon Urie is much more concerned with celebrating that death of bachelorhood than the marriage itself, but seems a lot more hesitant to actually approach and embrace? As I said, it's a good song, and it's certainly got more personality than most songs in the Hot 100 right now, but I'm not sure if it would have been my single choice over Craze Equals Genius or LA Devotee or House of Memories. Just saying. Number 89, Victorious by Panic at the Disco. And yet, say what you will about the title track, it's definitely better than this, and that's entirely an issue with the production. I mean, did anyone bother to give the drums or the bass any presence at all? Because everything is plastered right in the mid-range and the upper range, and as such it feels so overloaded, thin, tinny, and way too blaring for its own damn good. And sure, it's a song celebrating shallowness, supposed to have that certain cheapness to it. Between the overlaid backing vocals, the buzzy synth and guitar that doesn't nearly have the groove that it thinks it has, and the pre-chorus that feels oddly rushed going into a pretty decent horn-driven hook, it's a sort of full-force pop rock song that feels like a head rush that rapidly turns into a headache. I'd skip this. Next, number 82, Walking on a Dream by Empire of the Sun. Okay, you're gonna have to follow me on this one. For a while now, there have been songs creeping into the Hot 100 that some enterprising critics have branded car commercial songs. Tracks that get big based off the fact that they could soundtrack a car commercial. Now, music's gotten big thanks to commercials in the past, but with the success of Too Close by Alex Clare and Renegades by Ex-Ambassadors last year, it's clear that these songs can be just as big, if not bigger, because of the commercials, not in spite of them. But say what you will about most of those songs, at least they're new songs. Walking on a Dream is a track from an Australian synth-pop duo, and it was dropped in 2008. The band actually hasn't released any new albums in 3 years. Now I'll say this, the song is agreeable enough. A slightly desaturated vocal line that was popular in the mid-2000s that actually features a really pleasant falsetto against a really sparse drum machine and muted melody. Lyrics about the dreamlike quality of falling in love. It's the sort of song where it's subtle enough to fill in the background but melodic enough to stick with you. In other words, the perfect sort of commercial song, and will probably be forgotten by me just as quickly. Good, but I'm not gonna care about this. Sorry. And finally, number 79, I Took a Pill in Ibiza by Mike Posner.
You don't wanna be stuck up on that stage singing, stuck up on that stage singing. Oh, I know a sad soul, sad soul.
Oh, I haven't been looking forward to this. In case you don't know, Mike Posner started off his career with Cooler Than Me in 2010, which is easily one of the worst songs of the year, probably my least favorite song of that year. The only reason that song is remotely likable was the production, and even that sounds a little bit dated 6 years later. The bigger reason why I didn't like this guy was his gutless voice, the asinine self-aggrandizing, and his badly written attempts to hit on a girl by insulting and negging her. In other words, I'm not surprised that everything he released after that song flopped and flopped hard. And apparently this is a song that he wrote about his rise and fall in the music industry, inspired by none other than Jake Owen, a country singer, calling him on his bullshit. And you know, I'll say it, I actually kind of like this song. Well, it's because it's an older, more honest version of Mike Posner than I've normally heard, reflecting on empty fame and loneliness that's impossible to relate to folks who saw him come up and make it and now want his secret. That's the lyrical content that's actually pretty well written, and really it's a shame that Mike Posner's not a more interesting performer or picked better instrumentation. I actually heard the remix before the original version, that's the remix that's playing now, which picks up the tempo for more of a tropical house vibe that co-spines some pretty slick synth work that I actually like, and I highly recommend you hear that version instead of the slowed down acoustic acoustic version that's way too syrupy and slow to maintain the atmosphere. I mean, sure, it sounds just like what Justin Bieber's putting out now, but at least Mike Posner's a better technical writer and actually has more to say. So, in other words, I actually like this a fair bit. I'll take it. So yeah, that was our week, and really, I'm gonna have a hard time picking any really great songs because I wasn't blown out of the water by anything. For the best of the week, I guess I'm gonna give it to Lukas Graham, 7 Years, for some great pop construction, but honorable mention's going to I Took a Pill in Ibiza by Mike Posner, but only for the remix. The original, not a chance. As for the worst, I'm giving it to DJ Snake for Middle with Bipolar Sunshine for just giving me a splitting headache. Something that our dishonorable mention, Lean and Dabb by ILoveMemphis, didn't even manage to pull off. And yeah, I said I had some promising things about that song, but it's still not anything close to good. So yeah, not quite as great as previous weeks, but still fine enough. I'll take this. In other words, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.